Hi everyone, my name is Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. Welcome along to another Technical Highlights webinar. During these webinars I talk for about half an hour on some Comet topics. So there is a Comet webinar every fortnight. We alternate every fortnight. It will either be an introductory webinar for new users or a bit more in-depth one where I talk about new Comet features, best practice tips, IT industry news. There's been a little bit of disruption recently. The schedule is a bit aspirational, but we've been doing these for about a year now, and overall we've been pretty reliable about it. You can sign up for notifications when these webinars go live, and I'm coming to you live today. It's 9 AM here in New Zealand. So if you're viewing this live on our webinar platform, then you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen there's a questions widget. Feel free to pop in any questions that you have. They'll be sent privately to me, and then at the end of the presentation, I'll have a few minutes to answer any questions. So anything that springs to mind, any clarifications, anything you want to answer, just write it in, and I'll do my best to answer it at the end. After this live presentation, the webinar might be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Can't take live questions on YouTube, but if you have any questions, if you're watching this on YouTube and you have any questions, flick us a ticket through the support ticket system. Last time, and this was 2 months ago, sorry I missed doing one last month. Last time I talked about COVID-19 forecast and hardship assistance. I've spoken about this a few times in the past, so I won't go into detail about it again today, but just to quickly reiterate, if your MSP business was negatively affected by COVID-19, we are able to offer some financial hardship assistance. If you're struggling, please just reach out. We're all in this together. I had also talked about the new integrations page on our website, and I talked about the launch of Comet 20.5 Aurora and some of the new features in that, such as two-factor for customer accounts, remote file browse, and also remote uninstall and remote change URL, direct to Wasabi support, so you can automatically create direct cloud storage buckets that are fast and private, combined with also being able to hide the cloud storage branding so that you can actually make use of this direct cloud support in a white label MSP context. And then I closed off the webinar with a quick mention of our feature request system and our API. At Comet, we have two release tracks, the quarterly long-term support versions, and then our latest weekly development branch, that's Voyager. And every 3 months, we'll roll up Voyager into a new long-term support release. And that's been our model for a while now, and we're sticking with it. It's got a lot of benefits. If you need the latest and greatest, you can have it. But if you'd rather get long-term support for a non-moving target, then those quarterly releases are perfect for you. And we're happy to provide bug fixes and extended ticket support for those versions. So inside this 3-month cycle that we're in right now, we're currently about 2/3 of the way through it. If you've been using the quarterly, the 20.5 Aurora release, I'm just going to give a bit of a preview of what's new in Voyager, what we've been up to for the last 2 months in the 20.6 Voyager series. Hopefully drum up a bit of excitement about our new features and what's coming up for you. During the 20.6 series so far, the things I want to talk about are interface changes throughout the desktop app. Now, when I say interface changes, I know some people immediately get a bit scared, but don't worry, they're just small changes, not big ones, but they add up to make Comet just a lot easier to use on an everyday basis. So I'll give a quick tour of what's changed, including the main window, protected items, the restore dialog. There's been some changes to SQL Server. There's new support for archive restores, restricted admin accounts, and webhook API. And then, like I said, I'll be able to answer your questions at the end. These webinars are scheduled for just half an hour only. We'll try and be strict about that. You guys are, MSPs are busy people, so thank you very much for taking time out of your day to be here for this presentation. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. I'll get started right away with the user interface changes. So we're starting with the main window where you see your list of protected items. Here's a little picture of what the Comet Backup desktop app looks like today in the quarterly 20.5 Aurora release. This is actually an older screenshot, but it is, it's representative of what Comet looks like. There's all these green bars underneath the protected items, and it was quite cool. The green bars hide and show depending on what jobs are running. They're animated so you can see the progress in which. But over time, we did run into some problems with this design. The first problem we found was that people didn't realize they were clickable. Do you know you can click these green bars? You can mouse over them and click them, and it takes you into the full screen on the right-hand side where you can see the live progress. Or it would, if not for another problem where if you restarted the desktop app and opened it again, the green bar would disappear from the GUI, even though the job would still be running in the background through the background delegate service. And if you ran multiple backup jobs, you could start to see the green bars pile up under each protected item. And I mean, that is a bit helpful to know that the information you know, but it was a bit overwhelming, not really actionable, just a bit confusing. Also, some questions about the green color. In particular, green normally means success. And if that's the case, then maybe the bar color should change to yellow on warning and red on error. And we had, and we had several people make the suggestion that the bars should stop being green once they hit an error. And we thought about it, and it seems like a good idea, but actually there's two main problems. Once a job hits a warning, the progress bar normally disappears quite quickly, so you'd hardly ever see it. And the other thing is you don't really hit a warning until right near the end of the job. And during a backup job, you don't know how it's going to turn out in the end. It was not successful until the end. If it's not successful now, then why is it green now? So the fact that green implies success is a bit of a problem, because having the bar be green doesn't make sense. And all of these problems are improved with the new design. So this is a picture of the latest Comet 20.6 Voyager release. Immediately you can see the main visual change that you and your customers will probably notice immediately is we've just gotten rid of the green bars. I would like to point out a few things in a bit more detail. Firstly, in this left-hand column, the protected item type logo has a spinning animation around it to indicate that it's running. It is obviously clickable. Now there's only one thing to click, not two. It's all been unified together for easier access. A single click on this takes you to the history screen. The table will automatically select the most recent job by default, and when something's selected, this bottom part pops up to show you the information about that selected job. If that's running, you will get the progress bar view. Even if you restart the app, we now preserve the live progress bar even on a restart. So you can immediately see the detailed logs as well. Auto refreshing history table. So once the backup job finishes, we know this table row here should be changed to say status finished, and Comet will immediately make that change. No more worrying about the history table hasn't been refreshed yet, because now it refreshes automatically. And we've unified the color scheme. Like I said, green doesn't really make sense, so we've gone with blue. And it's actually a really nice match to the rest of the app interface, the blue selection row here. It's just a bit more polished, streamlined. It's actually a callback to some very early beta versions of Comet where the bar used to be blue when you ran it on Windows Server. So this design is available now in current Voyager versions of Comet. Feel free to try it out before it lands in the next quarterly rollup release. We're always happy to hear any feedback in the tickets, but the feedback we've seen so far has been very positive, and we're happy this change has been a quite clear-cut improvement to usability. Moving on, a few more user interface changes in our 20.6 Voyager series. People use Comet in different ways. Some MSP service providers will get really involved with the customer. They will set up everything for them. And if it's a little bit complicated, then don't worry, because the MSP is a smart person who's done it before and knows how it all works. But some MSPs are a bit more hands-off. They will give the software to the customer and expect the customer to set it up themselves. In that case, we need the software to be easy to use. Customers are clever, but we can definitely improve the experience for them. That's going to be a recurring theme in this section with a few main parts. So the first thing that we've done in this area is to redesign the protected item type selector just to make it really obvious that file and folder is the default type. We've gone from having, this used to be a small drop-down to being a large area, and it just means there's a bit more room for explanation text. Explaining what the purpose of the option was, like it used to be a drop-down, what was the point of the drop-down? And also making it immediately visible that the other types are possible. Now we have to strike a balance here, a balance between giving more context to explain things, but also don't want to overwhelm with too much text. So the balance we've chosen is to put the text only on the most common popular types, and everything else gets bunched up into the application category. So this is one step towards simplifying, the first step. Moving on to the next step, when you're creating this protected item, you now switch to the Files and Folders Items tab. And we've changed this screen a bit. In this case, we've now got two tabs. The Include tab shows you some quick select options, some common things that users are likely to select. This currently includes desktop documents, downloads. I'm not sure if you can read this from the video, but music, pictures, videos, favorites, Outlook, and Windows Mail. The Outlook and Windows Mail options are Windows specific, so your Mac and Linux users won't see them. So this quick select view is actually really nice to use in practice. And if you've kind of MSP that just hands over the software to the end user, I'm sure your end users will appreciate this very much. It's just a little bit simpler, and the full power is only one click away over on that custom tab. It'll also remember what tab you're on. There's a few new things over in the custom area. Even within this full power custom section, we can still simplify and clarify without losing any power. You can immediately see there are now icons for each entry based on the file type. The icons come from the operating system, so they'll be platform dependent, correct for the current PC. We've also taken this opportunity to tweak the wording for some of the configuration options. Dismiss EFS warning. EFS, can I get a show of hands if you know what EFS is? course, I can't see your hands. But when you're a large backup organization, after a while, you start to run into all the edge cases that are out there in the world. And EFS is definitely one of those edge cases. In some organizations, it will be very common, but we've found most partners never run across it. So the wording has been changed to reflect that it's something you only need to dismiss if you get a warning about it. I won't go into any more detail about EFS right now, since there's nothing really new to say. If you want to know more about EFS and how that works, then please check our documentation or my previous webinar recordings. What I would like to go into more detail about is, so this is the files and folders protected item type, but there have also been a few changes for the SQL Server protected item type. So just to run through this quickly, the first thing we've done is put tabs at the bottom here. Before, there were about 10 different fields and drop-downs here, and it was just much too complicated to cram into the bottom. So I've taken a cue from our other MySQL and MongoDB database boosters and just put some tabs in here at the bottom to make that more consistent. And just a quick reminder, since this was new last quarter, I think the ability to perform Windows account impersonation. If your SQL Server uses Windows authentication, then you can now enter Windows credentials to access it. Impersonation isn't brand new, but something that is over on the connection tab. There's a new OLEDB method selector. This is for a specific problem where if you are for some reason using an old 32-bit SQL Server on top of 64-bit Windows, you'll know what a pain this is to get working. But now Comet ships both 32-bit and 64-bit support libraries, and it's just an easy drop-down to pick what connection method is being used. Hopefully you're not in that situation, but someone was, and now it's easier. Last thing to say about SQL Server, I just have to say our SQL Server booster has proven to be very popular and robust. We're really happy to see this feature getting a lot of users, and we're definitely happy to keep improving our SQL Server support in the future. That's all for SQL Server. Moving on to the restore dialog. Once you've set up your protected items and ran a backup, you might want to use the restore dialog. And some things are new in here too, just trying to make it easier to use. For a start, when you select files to restore, we now default to the we used to default to the all items option, but now we default to the select items. And I think most people really want to see what's inside their backup job. So since we switched to the select item, it means that the file tree loads by default. So it's a simple change, but now you immediately get to see what was inside your backup job. We've also put checkboxes here so that it's more obvious how you choose multiple files for restore. In the past, we just had row selection. And that was fine, but when you're trying to select multiple things to restore at once, then the checkboxes are just a bit more obvious. And just a last nice quality of life thing is now you can hover over the size column to see the exact size in bytes. And this is just to bring the behavior in line with a web interface that was doing this useful feature already. Another new feature in the 20.6 series is when you go on to the final step of the restore, you can, of course, change this drop-down here. Normally, you've just picked files for restore, and then you leave it as files and folders, and you choose where the files get restored to. But actually, you don't have to just restore into some target directory. There are 4 different options here. One of the options is simulate restore only. So this is an old feature with a new name. We found a lot of partners were a bit confused about this option and what it does. If you pick this option, it performs the restore into thin air. It does the download, it reaches out to the storage vault, recombines all the chunks, decompresses, decrypts them, and then just throws the result away. It's a useful thing to sort of test that your restore processes are working. But the old name was a bit confusing, and we found that people weren't really sure about what it did. So the new name, simulate restore only, I think better describes this behavior of sort of how it simulates the end-to-end restore process, just to sort of check for any errors as a way of validating that restore process. But aside from that, what I actually want to spend a bit more time talking about is this brand new 4th option here, compressed archive file. So restoring as a compressed archive file is brand new in the 20.6 Voyager releases, the ability to restore files as zip. So when you go to restore files, you see on this final screen, choose compressed archive from the drop-down, pick an output file, there you go. A zip file will be created on the fly containing a compressed version of your selected files. And this can be really useful in a few different situations. One is perhaps if you are low on local disk space, the zip files will compress down a little bit. They're not using ultra compression levels, but still, good compression that will help in many common cases to reduce the file sizes. In particular, one situation, maybe you're restoring files to a USB flash drive that you're going to send to the customer. It might be helpful to have a zip file. Or if there's a lot of small files you're restoring, then it's definitely more efficient to deal with them as a single zip. So this feature supports it. Obviously, that's the most common archive format, especially on Windows, but it also supports tar and tar.gz for all the Linux users out there. Fun fact about Linux, you might be interested to learn that if your Linux distro uses BSD tar instead of GNU tar, then the tar command can also unpack zip files and many other file formats. So just a fun fact for you if you want to apt-get install the BSD tar package. As a kind of wildcard, we also added support for SquashFS, which is an archive file format, like a zip file. You can open it up in 7-zip and so on, but of course is a bit rare and not as commonly used. We did this because it has a special property. On Linux, you can mount a SquashFS file as a read-only virtual drive that will let you browse and run files directly. So, for example, if you've taken a virtual machine backup, and you've got a great big VM disk image, you can restore it as a small compressed SquashFS file, mount the SquashFS file as a virtual drive, and then use that VM image in read-only mode directly from that compressed mount point, keeping everything end-to-end compressed. Or maybe for another example, you're trying to restore a large database dump onto a small web server with limited disk space. You can restore it as SquashFS format, loop mount it. So it's quite versatile in terms of being able to really use and work with large files, such as virtual machine disk images, large database dumps, staying in compressed format in space-constrained environments. But I do have to say it's a bit wild and out there, and I'm imagining it's mostly the Linux users that will benefit from this. So a feature that will benefit everyone, on the other hand. Actually, I don't think many partners use this feature, but I wish they did. There's an option in the Comet Server branding settings to add a help page. And all you have to do is put in a web address and select the embedded frame option, and then it will show up in the Comet Backup desktop app here. You see this extra help option appears as the 5th option in the main screen and loads your web content in an embedded frame. Now, this isn't a new feature. It's been here for a while now, but it's customized help content. The idea is that you'd make some web page like this, use the dark blue color. And then when you go to load it inside Comet, it looks like a really neat integrated help system for your customers. And maybe it's just something really simple, like here's our phone number. Because it's a web page, you could have a form, you could have a ticket system, videos, you could have live chat directly inside the Comet Backup desktop app. How about that? Videos and live chat support. The only problem is that this web rendering was based on the operating system's web engine, and until recently that meant Internet Explorer. And we're all IT geeks. We know nobody likes Internet Explorer anymore. And certainly it can have difficulty with more complex websites. If you build some really interesting and complicated web app using modern web technology, then there's just a high chance that it doesn't work in Internet Explorer. And that's just sort of where things were at for a while now. We looked at alternatives. Some apps like Slack and Microsoft Teams and Steam and Discord and Spotify are all built using web technology, and they get around this problem by shipping with the application installer their whole own private version of Chrome, and that makes their installers over 100 megabytes. And we thought for Comet, that was probably a bad trade-off. We're quite happy with our nice small install size, and so we chose not to do that. But a funny thing happened recently. Internet Explorer got stuck frozen at 11, and now we have Microsoft Edge. You all know that happened years ago, but maybe you didn't know the next part. Edge got an update from 18 to 79 last month, so a big version number jump from 18 up to 79. And as of Edge 79, Edge is now just a modified version of Chrome, or Chromium to be specific. It really is just a special version of Chrome. And it's really fascinating to see what were Microsoft thinking with this process, but I guess the idea is, there's a state-of-the-art web browser that they can build on top of. So what was the purpose of spending all this time and effort reinventing their own wheel when they can just move up the value chain? You take that high-quality Chromium engine and try and provide a value-add differentiated browser on top of it. But anyways, for Comets, as part of this process, it's now easier to embed inside applications. So in the latest Comet 20.6 versions, Comet will try and use the Edge Chromium renderer if it's installed, and fall back to the IE renderer only if it's not installed. And everyone is getting the new Edge through Windows Update, so you can probably rely on it being there on all PCs soon. And this should really just enable those rich experiences inside the help frame. The embedded help frame, if you want videos and live chat support directly built into Comet through the help screen, it's really neat technology. It makes Comet so much more personalized to your user base. I'd love to see more MSPs take advantage of it. All you have to do is put a dark theme on a website. You can do better than what I've done here, try and match the colors. and it looks great. And then just put the URL into the settings wizard and you get this really personalized, rich experience. Enough about that. Something else in the settings that personalizes your Comet Server a bit. When we designed Comet Server, our staff had a bit of experience with some other backup products on the market, and we saw them being used in all sorts of different ways. It turns out there's lots of different ways you can offer a backup service. High touch, low touch, hands-on, hands-off, shared storage, split storage, branded or unbranded. This kind of wide variety of use has led us towards making Comet really flexible. That's one of the reasons why we let a single account have multiple storage vaults, or it's why we have the split or throttle storage role designs, because we've seen people push the boundaries of what you can do with the product, and we want to support all our MSPs to set up Comet in a way that's best for them and for their business. And one interesting flexible use case that we've seen is that some MSPs will resell Comet Server to a down-level MSP. Like the chain of command goes from us, the software developers, to the MSP that takes our software and starts running their own Comet Server, to a down-level MSP that's reselling the first MSP service, and then to the end user. So it's sort of a multi-level MSP reseller system. And it works fine, but there's a few challenges when you do this. As the top-level MSP, you want to keep an eye on things and let the down-level MSP create and manage their customers, but they shouldn't have full reign over all the Comet Server settings. So a common pattern is to set up yourself, the top-level MSP, as a full admin, and then add the down-level MSP as a restricted admin. And what we're announcing today is additional granularity on what those restrictions can be. So now you can restrict access to the server settings, but then piecemeal pick out some parts of the setup wizard that you do want to grant access to. So you can have a down-level MSP that has access to self-service, change their branding settings, but not the underlying storage, or vice versa. So just quite a cool feature for those technical Comet partners that have sub-admins, sub-reseller partners, and you want to restrict their permissions in different ways. This isn't the full story for reseller support. There are a few more things we can do to make the life of a reseller a bit simpler, and we will have more to announce on that in the next quarter. Real-time API. I realize that API is a quite technical feature we love to talk about, but maybe you don't really interact with it directly unless you're a programmer, so I'll keep this section brief. At Comet, our focus is on building the world's best backup software. That's our core competency. But there's more to running a business than just the core software. And so we really recognize the value of building an ecosystem around our product and letting you integrate with the world, integrate Comet with your billing platform, integrate with your CRM, customer relationships. And to make that possible, we have a wide open API that lets you, all you have to do is hire a programmer. And then you can really introspect all this stuff, get your customer information, usage information, quota, storage sizes, all that metadata that's inside Comet, and get that out into your billing system or into your CRM, your BI. And we mean it, the entire Comet Server web interface, when you're managing your customers today, that's entirely built using the public API. So anything you can do by clicking around in the web interface, an API integration could be doing that in a fully automated way. Our API is easy to use, it's fully documented, there's sample code, SDKs, and even YouTube tutorials. But most of the MSPs out there would probably just prefer to use a ready-made, off-the-shelf integration. And that's a great position to be in because we have a lot of these off-the-shelf integrations available today. If you have a look at the integrations page on our website at cometbackup.com/integrations. So that's just background. To dive into what's actually new here, to be perfectly honest, how most of these API integrations work under the hood is, inside CloudView or inside HostBill, every hour or so, a timer goes off in the background. And on that timer, they will reach out to your Comet server and pull the latest data from your Comet server. That works decently well, but it's all just computers, so we can do better. And what we're announcing today in the 20.6 series is a new feature that lets Comet Server push this data directly out to a third-party system using webhooks in real time. So you configure an HTTP endpoint and you get JSON posted directly to you on all sorts of event types. It's configurable, there's deliverability guarantees, there's event filtering, and you can set them up on the fly. And maybe that doesn't mean much to you directly, but if you're a programmer, I'm sure your eyes just light up when you hear that. The important thing is that the stuff can become real time. No more waiting an hour for the data to refresh in your CRM. If you use any of our third-party ecosystem partner products today, such as CloudView, MyClient, Backup Radar, Check Central for monitoring, host build, WHMCS for billing, and CRM, that anything that takes information about your customers and lets you do billing or management from that, right now they'll update every hour or maybe every half hour. This new feature is for real-time information. As soon as something happens in Comet Server, it can get pushed into that surrounding product ecosystem. To be clear, what we've added is the capability for real-time, so those ecosystems can now be updated to be real-time, and I can't make any promises around third-party timeframes, but feel free to put the pressure on your vendor to get them to adopt these new features.